Hey everyone, welcome to the Juniper Links accounting channel. My name is Caroline and today we're going to look at IR35 changes and tips for 2021. So as you know, there are going to be some IR35 legislation changes. Luckily, not that much is changing, but the changes that are taking place are quite significant, so you'll want to stay tuned for the entire video so you can have the best chances of keeping your previous work safe as outside of IR35 and also making the best decision for yourself going forward. So without further delay, let's jump into my computer and get started with the video. Okay, so what is IR35? And basically, to break it down, it was legislation introduced to prevent disguised employment. And this basically means that HMRC doesn't want people working through a limited company when they're essentially an employee of the end client and they're just doing it for the tax relief. And in most cases, people are not inside IR35, so inside means that you have been caught by the legislation, and that would be an employment. Outside means that you're not working as an employee, you're actually an independent contractor and you're running your own business, you have multiple clients, you send in substitutes to complete the work for you, and you're not controlled in any way. So specifically, those who work with one client at a time are most at risk. So how is the legislation changing? What HMRC will require is for medium and large size companies to determine each contractor's IR35 status for them. So this essentially means that these companies now have legal risk to correctly determine your status, and if they don't do it correctly, HMRC will be coming after them for your employment taxes and national insurance. So as you could imagine, they don't really want to deal with that, and this is what's causing the biggest problem right now with IR35 and the changes that are being implemented. So what'll happen is you'll normally receive an IR35 status determination or something similar like this. Determinations can be challenged through an appeal process that the clients or your end client has to implement. Small companies will be exempt from legislation changes, so contractors can continue deciding their own IR35 status if that's the case. So right now, before April 2021, you are able to decide your own working status because your company takes on the liability for you to determine whether you're an employee or not. So that's all fine. However, the changes from April 2021 going forward means that the medium and large sized clients of yours would have the legal risk to determine your status. Just another note that these changes already exist in the public sector. They were implemented back in April 2017. So if you've got a public sector end client, they would have already been liable for your IR35 status since 2017. Some public sector bodies are exempt, such as the Ministry of Defence. But another note, how HMRC claimed that they would not investigate previous work. If you do switch to an inside IR35 contract, that's not necessarily the case, because they specifically say that if they find any kind of illegal activity, which essentially being inside IR35 working through your own company technically could be considered to be not fully legal in terms of a working arrangement, according to HMRC. So if they suspect that your previous work should have been inside IR35, just like your work is now, then they will be investigating you for that. So just to clarify, there are already public sector workers that have been investigated for potential back taxes by HMRC after being switched to an inside IR35 contract. So sear that into your mind. Know that HMRC is not your friend. They're not gonna just tell you that they're not gonna investigate back taxes. I mean, we can see that already with the loan charge. So what more do you need as evidence to prove that? Okay, so what do I actually need to do? There are some things that you can take precautions for. So, for example, your client will be responsible to determine your IR35 status from April 2021. So they'll send you out the determination. That's their legal responsibility now. And this is for medium and large size companies. So if you're found inside IR35, the client would need to deduct tax and national insurance through PAYE. Sometimes they opt to outsource this to an umbrella company, which isn't always the best option, but it is an option. Outside IR35 means that you can continue operating as a business without PAYE tax deductions. So that just means you're still working for yourself through your company. That's fine. This is ideally what we want. So what if I'm caught inside IR35? Again, your client would need to deduct taxes at source. They'll offer you a PAYE role, which is direct with the client, and that's generally just an employment position, so you should have employee rights with this, but double check, because sometimes they'll pay you as inside IR35 but not really an employment arrangement, like a 0-hour contract or something weird. So just double check that it is an employment. The client can opt to outsource this to an umbrella company. So I did mention that a little bit earlier, and I've got an example, or I've got some things to look out for when you have the option to go directly with the client versus umbrella. So, PAYE versus umbrella. They've got similar tax deductions, so normal tax and normal national insurance, just like any other employee would have. However, umbrella companies often deduct the employer's national insurance as well, which overall means less pay for you. So after about £8,500, closer to £9,000, then you start paying the employer starts paying 13.8% national insurance, which they don't want to pay. So they instead add that as an extra deduction to cover themselves for that. That means your overall pay gets reduced, and then the remaining value is the one that is taxed for your normal tax and national insurance. PAYE options, again, not the most amazing in a lot of cases, but it depends on your client and how generous they're willing to be, because they may reduce your gross pay to compensate for the fact they're going to have to pay that extra employer's national insurance. Actually deducting the employer's national insurance on your payslip from your pay is completely illegal. They can't do this because it is an employer's tax, but they might offer you a lower salary overall. And that doesn't necessarily have to be linked to the national insurance in any way, but it could be. So just keep an eye out for those things, because this could happen. So if you get a quote from each payment method, then you should have a good idea of how much you're actually going to receive at the end of the day. PAYE would generally have full employment rights, but double check, because this may not necessarily be the case. Okay. Blanket inside IR35 determinations. These are basically illegal, but who's going to enforce it, you know? So you've got a few choices here if this does happen to you. It's not a very nice situation to be in, but if you have limited options, you know, you got to do what you can. So yes, you could accept the determination and continue inside IR35, but it is risky for your previous work through your own company. Your second option is to challenge the determination. This may not result in anything. In most cases, it doesn't really change much, because the client doesn't really want the legal risk of the legislation in the first place. So this isn't going to really strike them as being something new. If you're super, super valuable and they just cannot afford to lose you as a independent consultant and are willing to take the risk to keep you as your own business, then they may change their determination in that case. Okay, option number 3 is to find another contract that is outside of IR35, generally recommended when the client doesn't change their mind, or with a client based outside the UK. So I've touched on this topic throughout the video with regards to protecting yourself for previous work. Our strongest recommendation that I can give you is basically to avoid going inside IR35 with the same client providing the exact same services. If you literally switch from outside through your own company as a business, and then suddenly you're considered inside, so employee for tax purposes is what they're quoting it as, and you're doing the exact same thing and treated in the exact same way, HMRC is going to be on your case and will definitely be looking into your previous work. And if they do catch on to the fact that you did this, it's such a high risk that they're going to investigate you for back taxes and basically claim that all of the income received through your company before you switch to an inside role should have been taxed as a salary from your end client. And it was your responsibility to determine your own status, so if you didn't do it correctly, that's all on you. In the new IR35 changes, if your client determines your status incorrectly, they would be responsible for the tax and national insurance, not you, because the employer messed up in that case. HMRC has already started, like I said, investigating those in the public sector that have done exactly this. So just don't do this where possible, like avoid it at all costs. Try to find another contract, readjust your business, change the way you're providing services so it's done more in a way that another client can't decide what your working practices are and whether you're an employee or not, because that's really weird. And just do anything you can to avoid this scenario, because it's just such a high risk of being investigated and also back taxed on that work through your company, which you really don't want. Another tip, of course, document any evidence to show how the roles are different. So if this does happen to you and you're confident that the role or the service that is being provided is different from when you are a company to when you're working as an employee of the end client or inside IR35, if you're convinced that they're significantly different and you're obviously controlled by the end client in one scenario where you're inside IR35, and before, when you're working through a company, you had much more freedom in how you did the work. No other employees there did what you were doing, and you were completely external to the client and they had no say in how you're doing your services. If that's the case, you can go with the same end client. Just make sure that you document as much evidence as you can to show the differences, because HMRC, again, will pick up on the fact you switched from through your company to an inside IR35 role with the same client. That's already just going to be a red flag to them. If this isn't possible and you're providing the same service, again, just find a different client. Even if you're going with an inside IR35 contract in a similar industry, just finding a different client would already safeguard you so much more than just staying with the same client with the same service. Okay, so here we have our helpful links, and these are linked in the video down below. This first link here is HMRC's document on the IR35 legislation changes. Feel free to look at that. The second link is our blog post on IR35. It's an older post, but it still contains a lot of useful information with regards to how HMRC determines an IR35 status, how courts determine an IR35 status actually from the law. So you can kind of learn about the different IR35 factors involved with determining your status. So feel free to check those out. Hey everyone, thanks for watching our video on IR35 tips and changes for 2021. I hope you enjoyed the content and found it useful. If you did like the video, then feel free to click that like button. If you want to see more content like this, then do subscribe to the channel. And also, if I left anything out or if you've got questions about IR35 or the changes coming up in 2021, then feel free to drop a comment down below and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.